Our long-awaited story begins inside of the Jedi Council chambers on Coruscant, as Anakin Skywalker is staring out of the window with tears forming in his eyes. He knows that the fate of the Republic, of the Jedi, of the galaxy, it all lies in his hands, and in the decision that he makes in the next few seconds. All of this pressure was closing in on the Chosen One, but as Anakin stared across Coruscant, stared to where Padme's apartment was, Anakin made a choice. In this moment, everything became simple. All he had to do was decide what he wanted, and he turned towards the doors to go and do what he must. Across the city, glass shattered and rained down into the streets below, as Mace Windu and Darth Sidious were dueling in the ultimate test of light versus dark, and Mace had the Sith Lord right where he wanted him, on the now rain-soaked ledge of the window. Mace was able to use one perfect, precise arc of his blade to slash Sidious's blade in half, and suddenly, Sidious would sink to just being into Palpatine, old, shrunken, and weak, as he scrambled into the corner of the window. But even this was all a part of the Sith's game. Sidious turned his head to the door, where Anakin Skywalker ran inside, and Sidious told Anakin that he was right. He knew it would come to this. The Jedi are taking over. Anakin looked to Windu, his eyes burning with the desire for victory and his hatred of the Sith, as he told Sidious he has lost. But Sidious could feel the conflict in Anakin, and he yelled out at Windu that he has lost, as huge tendrils of blue lightning sprayed out of Sidious's hands. Anakin had to cover his eyes from just how bright it was, as Windu barely held up his blade in time. Anakin looked back at both Jedi and Sith, as both were yelling that the other was a traitor, basically begging Anakin for his help. Sidious yelled out to Anakin, saying that only he has the power to save the one he loves. And as Anakin looked into the lightning, deflecting off of Windu's lightsaber, he was forced to make a choice. In the span of only a few seconds, Anakin's mind flashed with Padme, working in the Senate and across the galaxy to achieve peace. Anakin saw Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, and so many more Jedi fighting for innocent lives in battles across the planets. And Anakin remembered Dooku, spraying this same Force lightning into him many times. The pain, the hatred, the anger. To be a Sith, Anakin realized, meant you could only care about yourself. Anakin realized Sidious may have the power to save Padme, but he would not give up that power so easily. The faces of everyone Anakin loved flashed before his eyes, and he made his choice, igniting his lightsaber. Both Windu and Sidious heard the lightsaber ignite, and for a half second, both of them could only hope that Anakin made the right choice. And Anakin's blue blade severed the wrists of Sidious. The lightning ceased, and Sidious felt his life's work fade away in an instant, as Anakin slammed a force push into his head, knocking the Sith Lord unconscious. And then, Mace Windu breathed a sigh of relief before holding up his blade, readying himself for the final kill. But Anakin stepped in between Windu and Sidious, telling the Jedi Master that he is unarmed. It's not the Jedi way. Windu grimly shook his head, saying a trial would be a joke. He controls the Senate and the courts. He's too dangerous to be left alive. Anakin shook his head, asking Windu if he's going to kill all of them too. Windu's eyes softened only a bit, as Anakin said that Palpatine predicted that the Jedi will try to take over, and if he kills Sidious now, then Sidious will look correct. The entire Jedi Order could suffer. Windu closed his eyes, fighting every urge to swing his blade down and just finish it, and he sternly asked Anakin if he could have taken Dooku alive, would he? Windu knew there was something off with how Anakin killed Dooku, but Anakin didn't back away from it anymore. He told Windu right now that he killed Dooku in cold blood. He did it because Palpatine told him to, and he grabbed Windu's wrist, telling him not to let Sidious win again. If he dies, thousands of innocent Jedi could be next. Anakin promised Windu that Palpatine will face a fair trial, and he will never see the light of day again. It's over. Windu sighed heavily, falling to his knees, then told Anakin that the handcuffs are on Kit Fisto's body. Anakin went and retrieved them, and together, he and Windu cuffed Palpatine before Windu used his comlink to have their pilot meet them by the broken window. And as they waited, Windu's mind began to clear, and he recalled something that Palpatine said in the final moments before Anakin acted. He asked Anakin why he hesitated. What did Palpatine promise him? Why did he tell Anakin he could save the one he loves? And now that it was over, Anakin had no real reason to lie any longer. He told Windu that it's Padme. He's been having dreams of her dying in childbirth. He can't live without her. He will find a way to save her life. Windu took only a second to realize exactly what Anakin was saying, and he slumped back even further into the floor. Anakin was married to Senator Amidala. He was the father of her child, which means the Chosen One, the most powerful Jedi in the entire Order, is about to have a child, possibly even more powerful than himself. And Windu decided he would deal with that later. The clone pilot arrived at the window, and the Jedi could sense his confusion, surprise, and fear as the two of them loaded the arrested Chancellor on board, and Windu just told him to go back to the temple. Upon arrival, Windu would carry Palpatine's body inside, as Shakti, Sindralik, Temple Guards, Padawans, and many other Jedi could only watch, knowing that one way or another, this war was about to come to an end. Windu told Shakti to get Senators Organa and Amidala here immediately, as they are the Jedi's best hopes to represent their side in the courts. And while Anakin anxiously waited for Padme to arrive, he hurried over to the Jedi Temple communications area, and his legs suddenly felt like jelly as he plugged in contact information for Mandalore and for Utapau. And after an agonizing couple minutes of waiting, 4 holograms appeared on the table: Commanders Rex and Cody, along with Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka Tano. Anakin breathed a huge sigh of relief. Grievous was dead, Maul was captured, and all of his friends survived the end of the war, so Anakin would tell them what happened. It wouldn't be long before Windu gathered the council, along with a delegation of senators that the council trusted, and they prepared for the trial of Chancellor Palpatine. In council, Mace Windu would express to the senators that he fears Palpatine controls the courts, but Bail Organa told Windu that Palpatine has lost a lot of friends in the Senate over the last few months. His constant overreach and efforts for more emergency powers took away a lot of power and wealth from many senators, and now that can be used against him. With the Jedi accusing Palpatine of being a Sith Lord, working directly with Dooku, and the senators accusing Palpatine of prolonging this war for his own gain, they can build a strong enough case to lock him away for good. And the very next morning, the trial would take place. Palpatine would eventually wake up inside of the Mandalorian vault built to hold Force sensitives, and Maul was removed from it, placed in Force restraining handcuffs in a cell guarded by many Jedi. In this trial, Palpatine's mouth was covered by a latch in the vault, as Anakin, Rex, and Ahsoka recalled the incident with fives, saying that perhaps Palpatine installed these chips, after all, to use the clone army against the Jedi. Yoda and Windu agreed this was possible, so Palpatine would not be speaking. Order 66 would be avoided. Mas Amedda and Tarkin would defend Palpatine, but it would be no use, as enough senators and court judges saw the evidence gathered by the Jedi, and the case was foolproof. Palpatine was convicted of treason of the highest level, and was locked away for the rest of his life inside of this vault. His hands would not be replaced, and he would be freed for 10 minutes daily to eat, drink, and use the bathroom under extremely high security. Otherwise, he would not leave the vault. And just like that, with Sidious, Dooku, and Grievous gone, the end of the war was nearly here. Obi-Wan and Cody brought encrypted records back from Utapau that detailed where the Separatist leaders were sent. So in a final mission, it was only fitting that Anakin, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Rex, and Cody lead the 501st and 212th to Mustafar, gathered whatever droid remnants to the lava planet that they could, but they were no match for the greatest duo the Jedi Order had to offer. The battle would be an overwhelming victory for the Republic, and the corporate leaders were finally arrested, and as the mission was wrapping up, Obi-Wan came to Anakin and asked if he was alright. Anakin didn't hesitate to accept this mission, but Obi-Wan noticed that whenever they weren't in battle, Anakin had seemed distant, as if he were dreading something on the horizon, and he was right. Since the conviction of Palpatine, Anakin had stopped having nightmares of Padme dying, but he still couldn't shake the fear that she would die in childbirth. Plus, Anakin had been avoiding Windu and the Council, as Windu knew the truth. Anakin didn't want to have to face the reality of his marriage being public quite yet, so he just smiled at Obi-Wan and said that a small part of him is going to miss the fighting. The friendships between the two of them, along with the relationships created with the clones, only happened because of the war. Of course, the two of them would still be friends, but this war did bring them closer together. Rex would overhear this, and he chimed in, saying that many of the clones have mixed feelings about the war. Without it, they may not be very useful in this galaxy. But Obi-Wan assured Rex that he and the rest of the council will make sure that giving the clone troopers the lives they all deserve will be top priority. And Rex believed him, which took a huge weight off his shoulders, as their Venator took off back to Coruscant, marking the official end of the war. And on Coruscant, Anakin finally would have to face the reality that he'd long feared. He and Padme were both called into the council chambers in front of a fully gathered council, and Padme quickly understood what was happening here, and whatever the council decided to do with Anakin, she was prepared for. The only reason Anakin hadn't left the Order was because it's what Padme wanted. She knew how strong Anakin was in battle, and if she let him leave the Order, who knew how many more innocent lives would be lost in battles that he wasn't fighting in. But to the surprise of both of them, the council was not angry. Anakin quickly came to realize that when the pressure of galactic war was not on the shoulders of the council, they were not nearly as stuck up. Yoda spoke to them, saying that Anakin has always been a special case for the Order. Unlike every other Jedi, Anakin had a life before he was a Jedi. It was unfair for them to ever fully expect Anakin to give that up. Then, Obi-Wan spoke to Padme, saying that he has seen countless times how valuable she has been to keep Anakin grounded, and the council recognized how valuable Padme has been to the Republic. Without senators like her, there would be no Republic, and after some more conversation, the two of them were dismissed without any repercussions. Anakin thought it was too good to be true, and he was right. Windu requested that in exchange for neither of them facing any trouble for their secrecy, the Jedi Temple request that their child be trained as a Jedi. This child will be powerful, perhaps even more than Anakin himself, and they must never fall into the wrong hands. Anakin quickly accepted, but he had his own terms of negotiation. First, the council helps to make sure that Padme survives childbirth. They must do everything in their power to keep her alive. Second, the child gets unlimited access to their mother. And third, Anakin gets to help choose who will be the child's master. The council was silent for a long moment before Yoda finally said that the council accepts these terms. And only a few days later, as the galaxy was settling in, and Anakin was finally being relieved of some stress, Padme would go into labor. The process would be long, but she would be in the best hospital on Coruscant, with Jedi on standby to give her strength if needed. But with Anakin by her side, Padme had everything she needed already. She would give birth to twins, Luke and Leia, and a new era would truly be underway. This would not be Jedi right away. Instead, for the first few years, the children would be raised on Naboo by both Padme and Anakin, and as they left for Naboo, Bail Organa assured Padme that the Senate will be just fine without her. Bail was campaigning across the galaxy to become the next Chancellor while spreading the truth about Palpatine. Among the citizens of the Republic, Palpatine was an extremely popular Chancellor, but every single day, that popularity and protests for his release were fading away as Bail, Mon Mothma, and others were finally telling the truth. And soon, Bail was in the running to become the next Chancellor, along with Mas Amedda, and even Mace Windu had a lot of support to become the next Chancellor, though he declined the nomination. In the end, Bail would win the vote by a rather large margin, and he would officially replace Palpatine as the next Chancellor. And so as the days passed by, Bail worked hard with the Senate to negotiate with the Separatist Senate. Bail and the other members of the Republic could clearly see that the Separatists had many excellent points about the corruption, but Bail pointed out that the Separatists were led by Dooku, who was as corrupt as Palpatine, and over many long weeks, the Separatists and Republic would merge together once more, and Bail's closest inner circle would be composed of members of both groups. The Republic was in good hands, and on Naboo, Anakin Skywalker would be living the life he'd always dreamt of. Every morning he woke up to the sounds of the Naboo birds flying above the water, and he got to be with Padme, Luke, and Leia. For 3 years, everything was perfect, and during these 3 years, despite being just as long as the Clone Wars, they felt like they flew by in the blink of an eye. Visits from Rex and Cody would keep them updated on the news. The clones were all given a pension to go live a new life or the opportunity to stay on as security living in the barracks on Coruscant. Many clones, including Rex and Cody, would choose to stay with the Republic. Obi-Wan would visit extremely often, and he would tell stories of the Jedi on Coruscant. He said that Windu was spending more time training the younglings, and Obi-Wan swore he even saw Windu laughing with a few of them the other day. Anakin refused to believe it. Windu didn't laugh. Obi-Wan described a recent expansion to the temple that was a huge room basically taking the weather and sights of different planets and putting them in a different area so the Jedi could see what other places were like that they might never visit. Obi-Wan also said that Yoda is starting to soften up in his old age, and he may not have much time left. Things were good in the temple, and the Jedi were spreading more into the underworld to help fix the dire situation that it's in. And of course, Ahsoka would visit nearly as often as Obi-Wan. She hadn't returned to the Order formally. Instead, she'd remained on Coruscant, and she'd actually fallen in love with Lux Bonteri, the newly appointed senator of Onderon. Though Ahsoka was always open to returning, it just had to be the right time. Ahsoka was able to keep Anakin and Padme updated on the Republic that was back to thriving, like the High Republic era. Expansion was at an all-time high, as the Republic had more planets within it than ever before. Things were good for everyone, and at the end of these 3 years, it was time. Padme would reclaim her place as the Senator of Naboo, and be a key ally for Bail Organa, while Anakin would take Luke and Leia to the Jedi Temple, where they would begin their Jedi training with the rest of the younglings. Anakin was able to come back as a Jedi Master, and his council seat was still open for him. He would take it. And for 10 years, Anakin would oversee the training of his children, along with many other younglings. In fact, for these 10 years, Anakin would become the main trainer for Jedi younglings, as his personality kept the children engaged. Anakin and Padme were back to playing vital roles in the galaxy, and Luke and Leia were unlike any younglings the Temple had seen in generations. As they grew, their days were split between quiet meditations, lessons in galactic history, Jedi history, and early saber drills under the watchful eyes of the Masters. Though too young to comprehend their lineage, the Force clung to them like gravity. It was an unseen current drawing the gaze of every knight, every master who passed them in the halls. Luke was restless and fiery in a fun way, always finishing at the top of any drills or exercises, while Leia was calm and controlled, and she was making sure to help anyone struggling beside her. By the time they were 7, they'd surpassed every member in their youngling group. Leia's mastery of her mindfulness in the Force and discipline in Form 3 outpaced even some Padawans twice her age. Luke, meanwhile, wielded a lightsaber with strong senses, allowing him to react before instructors even moved. Anakin trained them very often, guiding their progress with patience that he had never known in his own youth. His hard-earned lessons became theirs, shielding them from the anger and confusion that once consumed him. Leia would flourish in the light. Luke, however, did begin to withdraw when he felt held back, and as time passed, he began to smile less in sparring sessions. He trained harder when no one was watching. He started waking in the night, retreating to the archives to study the Temple's older, darker histories. Anakin quietly began to take notice, as it reminded him of himself. And in those same years, the galaxy outside of the Temple was being stabilized. Under Chancellor Organa, the Republic underwent a renaissance of reform. The war-shattered systems of the Mid and Outer Rim were rebuilt with programs designed largely by Padme and Mon Mothma. New academies were constructed on peaceful worlds like Naboo, Alderaan, Chandrila. The Jedi Order began embracing emotional health, connections rather than forbidding them. Luke and Leia became the poster children of the new future, seeing Padme quite often, as the Skywalker family would spend a lot of time together, despite Jedi rules. And yet Anakin's unease would still grow. He wasn't fully sure why. By age 10, the twins had become legends within the Temple. Leia had begun leading her peers in group meditations, guiding others through visions with really stunning clarity. Luke even surpassed some instructors in lightsaber combat, drawing praise from even Mace Windu. But while Leia balanced power with wisdom, Luke's duels were growing harsher. His desire to win was obsessive. He was fascinated with the Temple's history, Jedi history. Anakin watched his son's progress with a blend of awe and a mix of fear. Luke's choices mirrored his own as a boy, the same recklessness, the same hunger for more, and in his eyes, Anakin would see a reflection that he had tried to leave behind. The dark side, the Jedi believed, had lost, but Anakin sensed it hadn't vanished. It never truly would. It was always around, waiting quietly, patiently, and Luke, Anakin feared, was beginning to feel it and listen to it. Anakin would express this fear to Padme, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, among a few council members like Shaak Ti and Plo Koon, but all of them assured Anakin he worried too much, and often, Luke didn't show any signs of this. But still, Anakin would sometimes see it, because he previously lived it. Luke was too much like him, and it scared him. Meanwhile, Leia's connection to the living Force was pure, and she showed no signs of imbalance. She was attending galactic summits beside her mother, offering insight that was beyond her age. She even spent months in the Mid-Rim, learning diplomacy from Mon Mothma firsthand. But Luke refused to join those missions. He claimed his training mattered more. He sparred for hours each day. He was stronger, faster, but he was more distant. He pushed his body to its limits and was asking questions about the nature of power. Anakin wasn't sleeping very well when this was going on. He would walk the halls of the Temple alone, retracing steps he'd taken decades ago when he too had felt misunderstood. But luckily, this time, Palpatine was locked away. There was no one to push Luke into darkness, and when they turned 13, the twins stood among dozens of initiates in the Great Selection Chamber, where masters would choose their Padawans. Leia was poised, hands at her sides, radiating a calm aura, and Luke stood beside her, chin high, eyes sharp, as though daring the masters to overlook him. Anakin watched from the shadows of the balcony above, arms folded. He'd put in requests for who his children will be trained by. and soon selections were made. Ahsoka Tano, now back in the Order as a knight, would train Luke Skywalker, and Obi-Wan Kenobi himself would train Leia, his first Padawan since Anakin. And Anakin was extremely pleased with this. He knew Ahsoka was the perfect mentor to keep Luke on the right path, and again, Anakin was extremely thankful that the Sith were gone. Today, as Luke went to Ahsoka, Anakin allowed himself to remember Palpatine. He often refused to even think about the man, as Anakin nearly sided with him and ruined everything. To most, including Anakin, Palpatine was a relic of a darker age. But to Luke Skywalker, Palpatine would soon become something else entirely. It began when Luke was barely 14, early in his Padawan training. Restless, curious, and far too curious for his own good, he discovered old records from the end of the war. Luke would discover that not everything about his father was in the open. Council records showed that Anakin and Palpatine were extremely close, and Windu once reported that Anakin was nearly recruited to join the Sith Lord. It was dire, and Luke needed to know more. He knew he wouldn't get answers from Anakin, so one late night, Luke would use his acrobatics and his Force tricks to sneak through the ventilation systems of the Coruscant prison, sitting in the vent above Palpatine's cell. Luke used the Force to undo the latch over Palpatine's mouth. He introduced himself, to which Palpatine replied that he knows who Luke is, and he is glad to see him. What Luke would find here in Palpatine was not a monster, but an old man trapped in chains. Palpatine stood locked up in the vault, and at first Luke was terrified, but he had so many questions about his father. Palpatine spoke to him with warmth, curiosity, and kindness, not as a tyrant, but as a man full of regret. He told stories about his previous life as a Sith, about Anakin's near fall, about how love and fear can be manipulated by those in power, even the Jedi. Luke listened, and soon he would come back. Again and again, Luke would come back to Palpatine. He was fascinated by this man that the Jedi swore was so dangerous, and Palpatine had nothing else to do, so he talked with Luke. Over the years, as Luke's training advanced, his visits only continued. Between missions, in the middle of long nights, in stolen hours when he knew Ahsoka would not be checking his quarters. In the temple, Luke had become a model Padawan, talented, driven, constantly improving. He trained harder than ever. Ahsoka took him across the stars, settling border disputes, aiding refugee colonies, and in the field, Luke was a hero. He saved lives. But at night, in the prison's shadows, he sought answers from the only person who spoke to him without restriction. Palpatine got Luke to realize that his father might not love him, because he realizes that Luke is too much like him, and Luke would begin to see this truth. Whenever Luke now looked into Anakin's eyes, he realized just how cold they were, and a part of him wondered if he was meant to be a Jedi. Leia's path was different. Under Obi-Wan's guidance, she became the voice of the Order's future. Her assignments focused on rebuilding forgotten worlds, healing broken communities, inspiring new generations of Jedi and citizens alike. She was admired for her poise, her strength, her sense of balance. She and Luke would cross paths on joint missions, most memorably in the Vardos Crisis, where their coordination saved thousands against a crashing meteor. But even then, Leia sensed a growing distance in her brother. He was sharper, more driven, but colder. And sometimes, after missions, Luke would disappear for hours. Ahsoka began to notice the shift as well. His avoidance of questions, the increased frustration with rules, but she couldn't actually sense any darkness in him. It was all very odd. And inside the cell, over these many years, Palpatine watched Luke with a cold, calculating patience. Every word he spoke was bait wrapped in wisdom and comfort. He confessed to his sins, but always with context that hinted at the hypocrisy of the Jedi. He never pushed, he never demanded. He let Luke's questions guide the journey, always pretending to give answers. But within his mind, Palpatine was focused on only one thing: survival. Since his defeat, he had meditated obsessively on the art of essence transfer, perfecting it in theory, waiting for the right vessel. His body aged and withered in this vault, but his spirit burned. He could not outwardly use the Force while locked away, so his mind had secretly become beyond powerful. Luke, powerful and unstable, was a perfect candidate. But Palpatine knew better than to force this moment. He was planting seeds, letting the tree grow, and soon he could become the tree. By the time Luke turned 18, he was outwardly putting on a personality that made him seem cheerful and full of life. But far beneath his heart, there was a furnace that his anger, his frustration, and his jealousy were in. He saw how Padme and Anakin loved Leia. He saw how the galaxy loved Leia. And of course, Luke loved her. He wanted the best for her, but he couldn't shake these feelings. And despite everything, it seemed like there was only one person who truly knew how Luke felt. Anakin was so hesitant to talk about the dark side. Padme could never understand it. Leia didn't feel it. Ahsoka would never consider it. When Luke needed to get something off his chest, he went to Palpatine. And Luke believed that Palpatine was not the villain everyone believed him to be. He began to rationalize his visits as studies, an act of compassion even. He believed he could learn from the man's mistakes, avoid falling into the dark by truly understanding the dark. He believed, in his heart, that he was in control. And so, on the eve of his 19th birthday, he returned once more to the prison, looking for guidance. Luke spoke through the vent, and Palpatine was ready. It was time. Today, Palpatine used his full power to barely unleash a bit of darkness into the Force, and it touched Luke's mind. It was strong, powerful, enticing. Luke felt it, and he asked Palpatine what that was. Palpatine calmly said, "That is just a touch of power. That is the destiny that Luke has always felt, the same destiny that Anakin felt, stronger than any Jedi before him, and now passed down to him." Luke had no words, so Palpatine continued, saying that the light in this galaxy has grown too strong. The Force is out of balance, and that is why Anakin was born, to restore balance. Luke shook his head, saying that Anakin brought balance by defeating the Sith, but Palpatine chuckled before saying that this is not balance. The Jedi claim the Force is theirs to wield alone, and yet the Force disagrees, and that is why Luke has been so drawn to him. Palpatine could feel Luke's emotions shifting. He told Luke to embrace the power, the will of the Force flowing through him. Luke felt it, and he was scared. He grabbed his lightsaber and told Palpatine to stop talking, and he said he never should have come here. But Palpatine didn't stop. He waited 19 years for this moment. He told Luke that he only could have come here, that he is the chosen one, not Anakin, chosen by the Sith to restore balance. He told Luke that out of the trillions of beings in the galaxy, he is chosen to be the heir to his power. It is his destiny. And now Luke roared out in anger, cutting through the vent, landing in front of Palpatine. For the first time, Luke saw his old, grotesque face and yellow eyes, and Sidious smiled, telling Luke he is just like his father, but he is more. Luke lifted his blade in anger, and Darth Sidious simply told Luke to do it. Luke was finally strong enough. Luke was finally open enough to the darkness. He was ready. Do it. And Luke did, as the Sith Master commanded, stabbing his blade into Sidious's heart, as he could hear security clones sprinting down the hall. Sidious felt the blade, and his eyes went wide with glee as his body died while he was laughing. And then Luke felt something. His mind went dark, and Luke screamed out as the light inside of him was basically vanquished, replaced by Sidious's darkness joining his own. Luke and Sidious became one, and as the clone troopers opened the cell, they were already dead. Powerful lightning sprayed out of Luke's hands, eviscerating every one of them. He moved like a ghost through the halls, slaughtering clones and Jedi in his path. The familiar blue glow of Luke's blade was the last thing dozens of guards would see as the doors flew open. Sidious would take a deep breath of the fresh Coruscant air before reaching both hands up to where 2 Republic gunships were ordering him to stand down. Luke would slam them together as they crashed hard into the ground, but through the fiery explosions, Luke would now see the twin blades of Ahsoka Tano ignite in the fire, as she now ordered Luke to stand down. Tonight, Ahsoka had finally followed Luke here, but lost him when he went into the vents. Luke told her to get out of his way, and across Coruscant, Anakin, Leia, Obi-Wan, and hundreds of other Jedi were awoken from their sleep by this virgins in the Force. Something had awoken, and as they gathered, there were reports of destruction at the Republic prison. And when Luke never showed up in the temple, Anakin didn't hesitate, heading down to the prison where fire and smoke was everywhere, clouding his eyesight. Anakin landed his speeder near the exploded gunships, looking around when something caught his eye. A body that he easily recognized. Anakin sprinted over to Ahsoka, but she was already dead, with lightsaber stabs right through her heart. Anakin felt his entire world begin to collapse as he saw the Sith logo carved into the ground with a lightsaber that was left behind. Luke's lightsaber. And Anakin vowed in that moment, despite the odds being severely against him, that the Sith will not win. Whatever has happened to Luke, he will defeat it and bring back his son. 1 hour after the prison massacre, Anakin was in front of the Jedi Temple security console, rewatching the security footage of the prison break over and over again. He kept rewinding, going forward again and again. Anakin was so obsessed over it that he failed to realize that Padme and Leia were at the door, calling out to him. Anakin turned to see Padme, and she looked like she just aged 100 years. Her son was all over the galactic holonet for breaking into the prison and killing Palpatine. Some were calling Luke a hero for giving Palpatine what he deserved, but most were calling him a murderer for doing this, but also killing dozens of clones and Jedi, including Ahsoka. Padme said it doesn't make any sense. Why would Luke do this? What could he possibly be going after? Of course, in this exact moment, no one in the galaxy, except for the newly bridged mind of Sidious and Luke, knew that Sidious transferred his essence into Luke upon his death. Anakin felt like he was going crazy. It really made no sense at all. Why would Luke do this? But the more Anakin thought about it, the more it began to click. It all tied back to Palpatine. Anakin turned back to the console, turning up the audio as high as it could go, inside of Palpatine's cell. He watched Luke jump out of the vent and ignite his lightsaber, and Anakin zoomed in onto Palpatine's face. He was smiling, and although the audio was mixed with the sounds of security running down the hallway, Anakin listened closely. He heard Palpatine mutter 2 words that sent a chill down his spine. The Sith Lord simply told Luke to do it, in the same tone he used on Anakin when Anakin murdered Dooku. Anakin listened as Sidious laughed upon being stabbed, and moments upon dying, something seemed to shift in Luke. He shook his head, screamed out in what Anakin thought was anger, but maybe it was pain, or he was trying to fight something. And then it clicked. Anakin had a spark of hope reignited in him, as he told Leia and Padme that he doesn't think this was fully Luke, and he ran down to the Jedi archives to research ancient Sith powers. Anakin entered the research section, and after a few minutes of searching, he was reading all about essence transfer. This had to be it. It wasn't Luke. Anakin felt hope again, and then the doors opened to the restricted section, as Anakin heard the all-too-familiar soft footsteps and the cane of Master Yoda. Around a year ago, Yoda had passed on the title of Grand Master to Plo Koon, and seeing Yoda reminded Anakin of this, which reminded him of Plo Koon's relationship to Ahsoka. They were like father and daughter, and suddenly Anakin felt the extremely painful sting of Ahsoka's death. He was trying to hide from it, but he no longer could. Anakin looked to Yoda, and he wanted to tear everything in here apart. Emotions from many years ago rose up again, and Yoda could feel it. That's why he came in here. Anakin told Yoda about his discovery of essence transfer, and he said that he should have just let Mace Windu kill Sidious all those years ago. He didn't deserve to live, even in a cell. Yoda reminded Anakin that it was the will of the Force working through him that day that kept Windu from doing it. Anakin said it doesn't make any sense, and Yoda chuckled, saying that even in his 9,000 years of life, he is still trying to make sense of the Force. But it has now come to light that Sidious was still using the dark side, and perhaps his presence kept the rise of other dark side users at bay. And now, they have the opportunity to correct this mistake and bring Luke back. The doors slid open to the section, and this time Obi-Wan Kenobi entered. He wanted to ask Anakin if he was alright, but that question may just throw Anakin into a spiral of anger. So instead, Obi-Wan just said that Luke has always been just like his father, and Palpatine knew it, but perhaps that will be his downfall. Anakin shook his head, saying he should have sensed this. How could he not have sensed it? He should have confronted Palpatine, but Obi-Wan said there was no way of knowing. Palpatine was a scar on the history of the Jedi that the Order chose to ignore for the last 19 years. Perhaps the mistake among all of the Jedi was just trying to push the era of Sidious away, instead of learning from it. And they will not make that same mistake again. Before long, the Jedi Council was gathered, along with Padme, to discuss where Luke could have gone. By now, the entire council was convinced of Anakin's theory that Sidious convinced Luke to kill him so he could transfer his essence into Luke. Sidious was now essentially controlling Luke's mind, but Luke was not fully gone. He will remain alive for as long as he can fight inside of his mind. But Sidious is powerful, so everyone knew that Luke may not have long. By this point, around 20 years after the last fight with the Sith, the council consisted of some new members. From left to right it went Kit Fisto, Saesee Tiin, Ahsoka Tano, Anakin Skywalker, Baylan Skoll, Caleb Dume, Depa Billaba, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Cal Kestis, Grand Master Plo Koon, Mace Windu, and Shaak Ti. Throughout the years, members such as Coleman Cash, Apo Rances, Ki-Adi-Mundi died in missions aiding the Republic against criminal gangs, and Yoda stepped down altogether after nearly overseeing the death of the Jedi Order. And as the council gathered here today, Anakin couldn't bear to look at the empty seat next to him where Ahsoka should be sitting. Her funeral was being arranged as they sat here, and from the doorway, Padme asked where Sidious could possibly want to go. He's been locked up for nearly 2 decades, with zero communication to the outside world, except for Luke apparently. And after some discussion amongst the group, Windu spoke up to say that before Sidious was arrested, he had many allies. He was fully convinced that victory was in his grasp, and an empire would have been formed in his name. It's not unlikely that these groups continued to operate in the shadows, perhaps in the unknown regions, waiting for his potential escape, or for the rise of another Sith. Either way, the dark side never truly rests. The Council all came to an agreement on one thing. Wherever Luke, Darth Sidious, has gone to, he likely will not be alone. And out in the furthest reaches of the galaxy, Darth Sidious, using the body of Luke Skywalker, entered the ancient Sith temple on the planet Dromund Kaas. The force here was strong, and it whispered in a tongue older than language itself. Dense, swampy jungles stretched for miles beneath the clouds, and the soil reeked of death and power, pulsing with the echo of rituals performed by Sith lords, whose names had been lost to time. Storms raged above, black clouds were churning with violent electricity, never letting sunlight pierce the veil. Dromund Kaas was a wound in the galaxy, a graveyard for gods, and as Sidious stepped onto its surface, the very world seemed to breathe in his presence, awakening to something it had not felt in a long time. And as he approached the Obsidian Temple, a Bastunian male, along with 10 stormtroopers dressed in dark red armor, ran out of the temple, telling Sidious to stop or die. But Sidious, using Luke's body, used the Force to lift one of the troopers, choking him and whispering in ancient Sith language to this Bastunian, an assassin named Ochi, that he is none other than Darth Sidious himself. Sidious dropped this trooper, and in an instant, all of them dropped to a knee, proclaiming their pure loyalty to Sidious, as they knew he would return to them someday. Sidious told them to rise, as he would like to see what they've been working on in anticipation of his return. Deep beneath the surface of Dromund Kaas, hidden in the heart of an ancient Sith cave system, stretching for hundreds of miles, Darth Sidious stepped into the chamber that had taken many of these 20 years to carve into existence. The descent alone took forever, and when at last the doors opened, the scale of the project was clear. Suspended in the air by massive gravity anchors was the weapon, a monstrous, planet-killing super cannon known only to those who built it as the Galaxy Gun. It was 5 times the length of a Republic Venator, and it was created to replace what was going to be the Death Star in Sidious's empire. Sith troopers in red armor moved along the catwalks and decks surrounding the weapon to make sure it was nearly ready. The Galaxy Gun was breaking the laws of the galaxy. Its armored hull was forged from scavenged remains of the old Sith Empire, along with forgotten Separatist fleets, and fused with relics of the dark side gathered from Malachor, Zeost, Korriban. It was integrated within the weapon's frame, were massive cyclone accelerators designed to hurl torpedoes through light speed. Its heart was a pulsing bioreactor, its rhythmic pulse echoing through the cave like a distant war drum. Ochi had overseen every stage of its construction, cobbling together components ripped from the Separatist dreadnoughts, targeting arrays from ancient Republic supercomputers. The project was impossible until it wasn't. And yet, for all its power, the weapon could not yet fire. The Galaxy Gun awaited its final essential component, a lightspeed torpedo. This ancient, outlawed piece of technology, banned by the Republic after a single successful test centuries ago, had been purged from existence, and despite a decade of trying, Ochi and the Sith workers could not come close to rebuilding one of these torpedoes. The torpedo had to be a warhead housed in a containment shell, capable of piercing through hyperspace and striking its target with pinpoint accuracy, and it could annihilate entire planets upon impact. Ochi had spent years scouring records, decrypting lost archives, and finally, he learned the truth. Although he could not build a new torpedo, the last surviving lightspeed torpedo was hidden deep beneath the surface of Tython. Sealed within the world that gave birth to the Jedi, it was now the key to galactic conquest for the Sith. Sidious heard this, and he stood before the weapon in silence, letting the dark side speak through him. The timing was perfect. While the Republic basked in its fragile peace, and the Jedi trained new generations in blind serenity, a hammer of destruction awaited them. So, Sidious turned, and he told Ochi to prepare a ship to take off to Tython. He will retrieve the final lightspeed torpedo himself. And on Coruscant, Anakin Skywalker was standing at the barracks of the renovated clone trooper homes. After the war, the clones were able to undergo a process that stopped their accelerated aging. so there were still many veterans of the war leading this army that had spent most of its time over the last 2 decades making sure crime syndicates could not rise up against innocent planets. But today, it was back to fighting the Sith, just like the old days. Anakin watched as 50 different Republic cruisers, each with at least one Jedi Master and a few hundred clone troopers, rose up into the sky. All 50 of these ships were assigned to go to a strategic planet where Sidious could have gone. Windu was off to Kashyyyk, Cal Kestis to Mustafar, Shaak Ti to Korriban, Plo Koon and the Wolfpack to Kamino, and so on. Obi-Wan and his Padawan Leia were going to Tython. Anakin was going to Naboo with Rex and Padme. Anakin recalled the end of the Clone Wars, when he told Obi-Wan that he was going to miss the fighting a bit. Those words now haunted him. And so, the 50 groups of Jedi and clones blasted off into different parts of the galaxy. On the flight to Tython, Leia sat with Obi-Wan as they recalled their many years training together. The two of them have gotten very close, and Obi-Wan was much older and wiser than when he trained Anakin so long ago. Leia has grown into an excellent Jedi, and Obi-Wan was extremely proud of her. They went through a routine series of lightsaber training sessions to pass the time on this trip, as Leia asked more questions about the Sith and essence transfer, and Obi-Wan answered what he could. Before long, Cody would enter to inform them that they are entering Tython. The old Jedi planet was rather beautiful and calm, and the Republic ship would enter the atmosphere as Leia breathed a sigh mixed with relief and disappointment, as she said that Sidious must be elsewhere. But then, Obi-Wan felt something in the Force, and he immediately ordered the clones into battle position. Within seconds, a warship forged in the caves of Dromund Kaas tore into space. Behind it, a second, boxier Sith vessel emerged, moving slower, bulkier, shielded and bristling with strange compartments along its underbelly. The first vessel fired instantly, lancing beams of red onto the Republic cruiser. Sirens rang out aboard the Republic ship as its cannons turned to fire back, flooding the space above Tython with streaks of blue and red. The two massive ships engaged in a brutal fight. Clone starfighters poured from the Republic hangar, moving to intercept the Sith fighters that now swarmed outside. The battle was pure chaos. Debris was spiraling into the Tython atmosphere. But amid the carnage, the second Sith ship held back, positioning itself perfectly above the planet. A single transport broke away from its hangar and descended rapidly down towards the temple, disappearing into the clouds below. And aboard the Republic cruiser, Obi-Wan moved with urgency, Leia at his side. A transport was readied as the cruiser's shields flickered and alarms howled. The two Jedi launched from the hangar, weaving through the crossfire, following the dark ship that descended into the planet. Their transport pierced the clouds. Following the Sith vessel that pulled them deeper into the planet, Kenobi and Leia landed their ship next to the Sith ship, and they ran inside of the old temple. And at the heart of the temple, they found him. It was Luke Skywalker's body, but it was not Luke who gazed at them from behind the evil yellow eyes. Essence twisted in silence, and Darth Sidious smiled from within the face of the Chosen One's son. He ignited a red blade and said he will soon have unlimited power. No one will stand in his way. Obi-Wan and Leia ran in, and Sidious met their charge with powerful chaotic strikes, Leia fighting beside her master, her blades spinning in harmony with his. But Sidious was more powerful than anything she has ever faced. He twisted and spun, summoning storms of force lightning between strikes, shaking the ancient foundations of the temple. Statues crumbled around them, the ground split, wind whipped between unseen cracks, and through Luke's face, the Dark Lord sneered, delighting in the violence, and the fear beginning to creep into the corners of Leia's focus. The dark side screamed in the chamber, rising, crashing, and yet, somewhere beneath this hatred, Leia could feel the flicker of her brother. As the duel raged on, Leia's strikes became slower, more hesitant, and she reached out with the Force, casting her presence into the storm of minds that boiled within Luke's body. She whispered his name with her thoughts, telling him he must keep fighting. A scream echoed back at Leia. It was twisted, layered, and then she saw him, her twin. She saw flashes, memories of their childhood in the temple, of Ahsoka's guidance, laughter on the training fields, and he whispered back her name. It was his voice, distant, pained. Inside of his own mind, Luke was clawing against the Sith chains that Sidious wrapped around his soul. She pressed harder, ignoring the lightsaber that nearly grazed her cheek. In that moment now, Sidious faltered. His mask of calm shattered, as Luke's resistance was real, his will bucking against the Sith spirit within him. For a heartbeat, Sidious lost control. And in that heartbeat, he roared with pure hatred. The air cracked with power as he unleashed a seismic blast of force energy. Obi-Wan, caught in mid-strike, was hurled backward. He slammed into the far wall with bone-crunching force, a sickening thud echoing through the chamber. And with a snarl, Sidious raised both hands, pulling stone and rubble from the ceiling, hurling it down onto the Jedi Master. Leia broke free of Luke, and she sprinted towards the pile of debris as it collapsed on top of both of them. Sidious regained the dominance, but he fell to a knee, pushing Luke back down inside of him. He decided to let go and just get the torpedo. These Jedi weren't worth his time. And under the rocks, Leia and Obi-Wan were buried, but alive. Together, for many, many long minutes, the two of them were able to free themselves, as Leia told Obi-Wan that she found him. She found Luke. He's in there, fighting. The two of them ran to the entrance, but they were too late. Sidious had tracked down the torpedo, and it was placed upon the boxy ship as it rose up through the clouds. Leia asked Obi-Wan what Sidious just took, and Obi-Wan felt real, raw fear as he told Leia that Sidious may very well have a planet killer, and that torpedo could be the final piece. In space, the Republic ship was ripping the Sith ship apart, but it didn't matter. The Sith had what they came for, and they jumped into hyperspace back to Dromund Kaas. But Darth Sidious was not as perfect as he may have thought. While he was locked up for 20 years, the Republic made many technological advancements in the peace, and he was unaware of this. One of these was hyperspace tracking. Of course, one could always follow someone through hyperspace with a physical beacon. Obi-Wan once did so with Jango Fett before the war. But this version of hyperspace tracking didn't require a beacon. The Republic developed a series of static hyperspace field generators, and all 50 of the ships had one. So now, Sidious's Sith ship was being tracked to its precise location. And back on the Republic ship, Obi-Wan stood before the holotable as he relayed this truth to the Jedi Council. The Sith have acquired a lightspeed torpedo, and they must now act as if this is the final piece needed to fire a planet-killing weapon. On Coruscant, and in ships across the galaxy, the council members fell into heavy silence. Coruscant was the obvious target, the jewel of the Republic, and the symbol of Jedi power. Their minds moved quickly towards the fence, how they could begin summoning fleets, activating shields, preparing for an assault on the capital of the galaxy. But in the corner of the room, Anakin shook his head slowly. His voice cut through the strategizing Jedi. Sidious can't destroy Coruscant, he said. Not yet. He would need it intact to manipulate, enslave, and take over the galaxy with. What he needs now is fear. Something brutal enough to break the galaxy's will and bend it towards his own, to force the galactic capital to surrender. As he spoke, the Jedi turned towards him. At first, the Jedi had quiet skepticism, but then, to Anakin's surprise, Windu looked at him, and with a slow nod, he gave his trust to Anakin, saying he is right. Grandmaster Plo Koon knew this was all purely based on a hunch, but he decided to trust Anakin as well, asking where he thinks Sidious will attack instead. The answer to Anakin was simple. He will attack a planet with significance to the Republic, and significant to revenge against the people that took him down, Naboo. And so the Republic fleets were all redirected to Naboo. If Anakin is wrong, then Coruscant will fall without any resistance. And as the Naboo skies darkened with Republic capital ships and Jedi starfighters, Naboo's defense grids flickered to life for the first time since the war. The plan was going to rely fully on the senses of the Jedi. When the Sith galaxy gun fires, the torpedo will fly through hyperspace, and the Jedi must choose the exact, perfect moment to launch every single missile and cannon from Republic ships in the Naboo Defense Center. The people of Naboo could only watch the skies, praying the Jedi know what they are doing. But not all the Jedi would turn to this defense. In hyperspace, 4 figures stood silently in the war room of a Republic cruiser. Anakin stood beside Padme, Obi-Wan, and Leia. They were joined by the 212th and the 501st, the finest clones the Republic had left, veterans of the Clone War. And now they flew towards the heart of the Sith, Dromund Kaas, where they tracked Sidious through hyperspace. Above the Sith planet, the galaxy gun was awakened as it ripped through the ground and entered space. The monstrous weapon of ancient Sith groaned with power, its barrel glowing faintly with the pulsing light of the torpedo. Sidious stood on the cold, wet ground of Dromund Kaas as Ochi was offering reports and coordinates. The Sith troopers stood in perfect, silent formation, awaiting the command that would change the galaxy forever. And Sidious told the troopers they may fire when ready. And then The galaxy gun fired. The shot was a blinding streak, vanishing into hyperspace with a flash. Sidious closed his eyes and felt the power of the dark side. The galaxy would soon kneel to him, once and for all. The skies over Naboo were calm, and on hillsides and rooftops, Jedi stood still, listening, feeling, waiting. The Republic fleet hovered in the atmosphere, all targeting systems primed, every gunner staring down at the empty sky, waiting for a signal only the Jedi could sense. It was not about calculations, data, or machinery. It was purely instinct, harmony, and the will of the Force. Deep within Theed's central command, Republic and Naboo commanders stood silent as Jedi Masters Yoda, Windu, and Plo Koon sat in perfect stillness. Their minds were stretching beyond the confines of the physical world, reaching into the currents of the Force, riding them like waves. Eyes closed, but awareness sharpened to a razor's edge. All they could do was wait. In Andromen Kos, Darth Sidious looked to the sky in anger as the Republic cruiser somehow found him, descending down into the planet to finally try and defeat him. The cruiser landed, the doors burst open, clones surged forward into the stormy weather. The 212th and 501st Men descended upon the Sith fortress in a wave of fire and thunder, blasters lighting up the darkness as they screamed for the Republic. Sith troopers ran in at them, firing at the clones, and the swampy ground was the home of a final battle, as two figures carved a path through the fight. Commanders Cody and Rex, shoulder to shoulder, they moved as they had in the past. Cody blasted through a Sith trooper's helmet, while Rex slid beside him, tossing a thermal detonator, clearing a line in the trees. Back to back, reliving the glory of a time that never truly left them. And as this fight continued, Sidious waited in the temple as Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Leia ran in, eyes burning with purpose. The three Jedi didn't wait, they just launched themselves forward, and the great duel erupted. Anakin's strikes came with fury, raw, relentless, but not in darkness. Obi-Wan moved between the shadows and the light, his defense unshaken as always, and Leia struck with her strong will in the light. Sidious countered them all with cruel power, blades crashing down, lightning arcing, the ancient temple crumpling around them as the epic battle continued. But the tide would shift as the three Jedi pushed harder, combining their strength, their experience, and their love to save Luke. They struck as one, sabers knocking Sidious hard into a wall, and then they all used the Force to freeze him in place. And from the doorway, Padme Amidala appeared, stepping into the room with eyes not of a warrior, but of a mother. She raised no weapon. Instead, she reached out with her words, with her presence and her love. And as the Jedi held Sidious still, he was screaming out in anger. Their minds pierced the veil between flesh and soul, diving into the realm where Luke Skywalker's spirit was shackled. In that realm of shadows, Luke had nearly lost, but one by one their voices reached him. Obi-Wan's quiet guidance, Leia's constant belief, and Anakin telling Luke that he is just like him, and that is why he can win, along with Padme's love. And together, they lifted Luke, helped him rise, and Luke finally could fight back. The storm inside of his mind cracked, and Sidious screamed as his essence was torn from the vessel he'd tried to corrupt. His spirit, clinging desperately to its host, was dragged from the body and hurled into the void. It was a prison beyond time and space, where it would rot for eternity, never to return. And Luke Skywalker was free. He fell hard to the ground, and Anakin dropped down next to him, hugging his son, as both of them cried tears of joy. It was over. But on Naboo, the wait continued. Many Jedi wondered if Anakin was wrong. Could the torpedo be headed to Coruscant? But in the next instant, a ripple was felt, a tiny, tiny tremor. The torpedo was about to arrive. The Jedi spoke as one, ordering Naboo to fire. Instantly, hundreds of Republic missiles and Naboo cannons lit the heavens, converging at the precise point where the torpedo blazed across the stars. In a burst of explosions, the sky over Naboo exploded in light. A blinding detonation rippled through the clouds, then cascaded outward in a fiery bloom that mirrored the festive skies of Life Day. The torpedo was defeated. Naboo survived. The Sith were dead. Cheer erupted from the streets. Windu stood up, and Plo Koon returned his gaze as they looked to the stars, sensing the return of balance. Both of them looked down to where Yoda was, but Yoda was gone. This final effort killed him, and he was now one with the Force. In Andromen Kos, the clones secured the planet as rain washed away the last of the toppled Sith banners. Rex and Cody took down Ochi, and Anakin, Obi-Wan, Padme, Luke, and Leia got the reports from Naboo. They won. As they were soon leaving the planet, Anakin would pull Luke to the side, and together they greeted an old friend. Ahsoka Tano was here as a Force ghost, and she told Luke it was alright. He is still a great Jedi. With the Sith eradicated along with all of their loyalists, the galaxy could once more settle into peace, this time even more comfortably. Lux Bonteri, the new Chancellor of the Republic, would thank the Jedi for their heroics, and in time, both Luke and Leia would become Jedi Masters, as Luke took Ahsoka's seat on the Council, while Leia would take Anakin's. In his later years, Anakin would decide that the Order was set in the hands of his children, and he would essentially retire with Padme on Naboo. The galaxy was at peace, and so was the Skywalker family with their friends. Thank you everyone for listening to one of my favorite stories I've ever done, and now here are the 2 winners for my Saber giveaway, celebrating 90,000 subscribers. What a number. Thank you all. Let's get to 100, hey? First winner is at Killer Sword 2, nice name, and the second winner is at XGEKOZX3305. That felt like reading off lottery numbers. How else? XGKOZX. Anyways, XGEKOZX3305. Anyways, congrats to the 2 of you. All I need now is for both of you to email me using the email in my channel description, or just the one I'm about to list off right now, the Star Wars Galaxy 33@gmail.com. Hit me up there, and we'll get it all sorted out. Congrats to the 2 Saber giveaway winners. Let's get to 100K so we can do some more fun giveaways. Thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this long video. Usually I wait to do the full movie, but I had a busy weekend, so I don't know. I just said, screw it. Let's put it together. And here we go. Yeah, thanks for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow.